Excellent, and welcome to TADSummit Innovators. We have Noah Rafalko, and he's going to be talking about TNID. So before I hand over to you, Noah, first of all, thank you so much for the video you created that I published last week. That was excellent in getting the message out on adding comments to the FCC. I think that video maybe prompted Rick a little bit, Rick Joyce, to put his excellent note in to the FCC. So well done for that. So Noah, please.
Rick didn't need any prompting. He's not going away. I kept telling the guys over there, he's not going away.
Absolutely.
But anyhow.
So Noah, please introduce yourself and TNID. Thank you.
Sure. My name is Noah Rafalko, and thank you so much for having me. This is such a wild and crazy show. Most people know me as wild and crazy, so I think I'll fit right in.
Cool.
So I've been in the industry of telecommunications and advanced communications for several decades, really. And my job has been historically to evaluate technology, apply that technology, design around that technology to increase enterprise, municipalities, governmental, any type of infrastructure that's needed to do something that capable before that technology came along. So really early into voice over IP, before that really into designing over the legacy disgusting TDM type networks. But now I look back and say, wow, that was pretty secure if you think about it.
Yep.
And then the IP revolution came along, and here we are today, several technologies later, and I just love to be part of what we call TNID, which is trusted number identity. And with us, it really started when we started to see all these separations in identity way back in voice over IP, when you saw the landline that actually had these two endpoints that were connected. A copper line was literally connected from one spot to another. And to have that installed, you had to provide your, credentials, basically.
Exactly.
That gave you the strongest level of KYC you could ever imagine. And most telecom companies really built upon that type of KYC, saying, know where they are. We have a wire running right to them. We kind of know where they are.
Exactly.
Came along voice over IP, which kind of snipped that wire.
Yes.
And when that wire was snipped, the lack of identity that came with that was lost in the fog of innovation, because now myself and others looked at this service decoupled from that line, that physical line, as something magical. Like, oh my goodness, what can I do with this design? How can I throw these numbers around the globe? And, that's where some really cool people that were innovating in voice over IP early on, like Jeff Pulver and all that. Exactly. And we really hit it off. Cool. And so, now we stand with, after text enablement, and we were one of the first companies at TSG Global, which is the parent TNID. We really were one of the first 5 companies to text enable a landline. And I think myself, within the community that I was a part of, NYCHU, told me that this magical thing was just upon us, where we could text enable the voice over IP line. And I was absolutely amazed. So I went out, and he knew I could find it, and I secured it. And once I secured it, my brain was blown. I'm sitting there saying, oh my gosh, now every single business that has a business line can communicate with their customers. It's adding another channel, blah, blah, blah. And now we're in this separation again, where we have no idea who's calling us now. We have no idea who's texting us. And now we need a solution that actually is so advanced that I can't wait for it, and I couldn't wait for it. And once Jeff Pulver introduced me to blockchain, I found a new home in networks that solve for a lot of what the IP side of Web2 created. So I hope that gives a summary.
And how many years of that Jeff introduced you to blockchain, from when you went from who you were to understanding and combining blockchain with all your experience?
I remember speaking at a show, because again, now we're talking about AI and bots, and I was 2010, 2012.
So so you go way back with Jeff here.
Oh yeah, way before that. That was just speaking knows about, how do I help out? And I've spoken at some of the TAD summits too, or
Exactly. Oh yeah, and TAD Hack you've taken part in as well.
yeah. And I always loved creating things and having other people build them. So that's a lazy man's way of innovation, right?
Yeah.
But challenged at that show because half of the show was talking about blockchain, and I had no idea what blockchain was. I was just like everybody else. I thought it was all crypto based, and lo and behold, after I snuck into one of these little rooms and was listening to some speakers to get away really from the telecom crowd, I found myself unbelievably overwhelmed with an innovation that if my counterparts actually sat in that room with me, I don't think I'd have all the patents I have today. And that really is because that moment was a genesis moment for me. That was, I am seeing the next, like imagine yourself flashback into the late 80s, where you saw the future being today, where the internet is today. Can you even imagine getting a glimpse at that and believing it when there was no internet at all? And someone coming along, like, saying, hey, this is going to be the biggest thing you've ever seen. This is it. And now applications, we transact money over it. But the one ever filled in the gap for was identity. It's just lost in the fog of innovation. So hopefully
Also lost in the fog of all the silos. There's a conference running at the moment where they were talking about should we combine identity from PSTN and text, voice and text. And I'm like, but the identity is the customers. Why are we dividing it by service? By service silo. It's upside down. Some of the conversations that are taking place at the moment, because and a good point with VoIP. I remember I had one of the trialists for the AT&T trial for VoIP services, and I always had great fun being on conference calls, having people, senior figures in the industry telling me about how VoIP doesn't work. And I'm saying, well, I'm on a VoIP call now, But then, because, as you say, it was detached from a physical connection. I remember, because of E911, you'd have to put your address. So there was some know your customer, but you could change that because it was just management console. So I'm interested in your experiences all the way back to VoIP on how you resolved some of the know your customer issues.
Great question. And you point out something that I saw early on, and I was shocked, right? Like, I remember that child died in Florida.
That's correct, yes.
And that's what really powered the regulators, unfortunately. It was talked about that we should have something like that, but there was no force of hand. So in telecom, the industry doesn't move unless it's kind of like nudged, really hard. So along came the spider, let's say, being the FCC, and spun the web saying, hey, you can't do it. We're going to tell you what to do. And now you have 4 months or 3 months or whatever it was.
Yeah, exactly.
And that was at least a basic level. Again, the FCC, in its attempts to regulate, sometimes leaves things too wide open for interpretation, and therefore allows for these weird, like, sideways events to happen.
Exactly.
And what you're talking about is mobile E911, which was enhanced 911. I actually had some of those networks early on, and I was shocked at what I was looking at before I got there. Which was literally forwarded. Pretty much every single one of them did this. Is they forwarded your 911 call to an administrative line at the police station or at the fire station or something, not even an emergency line.
Yeah.
So it was a hodgepodge system.
Exactly.
But then evolved, and then the regulators came along and said, we need to deal with this now because we can't have loss of life.
Correct.
Well, if you think about how voice over IP, the limited KYC that's involved, literally as a carrier or a customer of a carrier, and I've been dealing at that level for a long time with the carriers, even between each other, there's no accountability beyond that first layer of a customer. There's no second with KYC, even though there's an asset that's shared all the way out to that end of that supply chain, being user using that number or a device.
Exactly.
So it was a natural fit. And that's why I found blockchain very easy, because it was just like, you have this key, this magic key called a unique identifier of a phone number that happens to be globally unique. What a coinkydink.
Yeah.
And just attach that phone number because it has this chain of custody already built. And all you have to do is connect the chain of custody to solve some of these things.
Yeah.
And then you have this magic key that you can just imagine that nobody else has this key, because that's what it is. If you call a phone, it's not going to land somewhere else unless it's right. And then just from there, you actually can know that there's an identity attached to that phone number. And that's like what you were saying earlier, with voice over IP, a credit card was attached to the phone number.
Yep.
With text messaging, a credit card was associated with the phone number.
Yeah.
Really, identity was just pay it, and you can call yourself Mickey Mouse. We really
exactly.
And that's where fraudsters really took advantage of voice over IP, because you could buy phone numbers that this industry of telecom has slowly been eroding in the sense of ability. They used to be the big boys on the block, and now they're scrambling. I mean, some of the companies all around the world that used to be, like one of them, I think recently was a Australian company or something, or Indian company, and they were in the position to actually buy Apple, like literally buy Apple. And now they're literally bankrupt.
Yes.
You can see there's a situation.
Big shift. Yeah.
Valuations and innovation, which also lowers security. If you don't have profitability, you're lowering security.
Yes.
If you're lowering price, sometimes you're lowering security.
In
the case of voice over IP, it became such an imbalance of cost versus network management. That, do I have to hire a whole bunch of people to manage all these numbers and understand a KYC platform, or do I just sell it to the next guy and let them do it?
Exactly.
And that's started to really just be commoditized. But they still had this thinking mentality of, hey, when you build it, you have to install something. I need a box to put it in on one end. And that's where they started to play around with voice over IP a little bit.
Yeah.
But then, you're talking about a carrier that just can't manage that identity.
Yeah.
And that's when profit rises over safeguards.
Exactly. Over security. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that from the voice over IP days, we just rinse and repeat every time.
Yes.
The same way, just, all over again. It's
exactly. So with TNID, just bringing it to your solution. So you've got the phone number, and then you've got other identity assets that can be linked to that, so that you can create, like, because let's take, if you want to get a mobile number in Italy, you have to show your citizen's card. So that is, that phone number is explicitly linked to your identity, your national identity card. So is that sort of part of what you're trying to do, but on the blockchain? So it's an immutable chain between when those two entities were linked, and my request to say, is this really Alan that's contacting me?
It really is an interesting dilemma and question at the same time, because it really is, you're attaching something to you, right?
Yes.
If we roll that out, let's start at the beginning of that.
Yeah.
You are you first, right? You put this identity to different places. The most common item that you put in there is a phone number attached to your identity.
Yeah.
So really, let's start with, hey, let's start with your phone number, but it doesn't necessarily have to be the lead telephone number as your identifier of your public profile. A phone number needs to do.
Okay, understood.
Do maybe another episode or two.
Exactly.
Working on some very, very special things that put distributed technology at a new level. Like, people have no idea how big this can disrupt different types of problems or different businesses that choose to stay in this centralized.
So is this a bit like the W3C's work on distributed identifiers?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Now I got it.
Identifiers, then you could build a much better profile of risk assessment and reputation, right?
Exactly.
Right now is built on a brand. Why isn't it built on a consumer that may misreport that it's spam, right?
Yep.
Wait, you did sign up. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to hit the wrong button and swipe the wrong way. I'm so sorry. I blocked,
Yep.
so sorry you couldn't send me now a critical alert that I needed to see, like a low balance alert on my gift card or something, So now I've done it to myself, and I'm still going to complain because I'm a consumer and I could never be wrong, So we try and solve this by saying, listen, you already use this every day. You put it into everything from, I don't care what's behind it, okay?
Yep.
Your phone number. Forget the tech. Forget what's under the iPad screen, just for a quick second. Just know that it works and it's secure. Imagine that. Imagine having a phone number that you could know was trusted identity, TNID. Imagine the number is now trusted, and now you can increase the trust level on it. That's Web3, right? Bringing your identity into this new community, but nobody knows you either, right?
Exactly.
How do you know you can trust anybody? Well, all you have to do is go to a dating site. You're going to learn you're not going to trust anybody really, right? So, but it bleeds over into so many other things.
Yep.
So look at it in a very simple, secure way. It's like having a secret key that you can unlock and share things with, just like you're doing today by attaching your identity to it, and you unlock it when you're entering it for coupons or you go to Walgreens or something.
Exactly. Doing
that because that's the easiest identifier for them to know that you can remember and that they can associate with your identity.
Yes.
So the structure is already built for this, ironically. Now it's, why are you storing my identity? Wait a second. I leave my license to look at, not to copy.
Yes.
And I about this recently to some friends. I said, the only place that I've ever had someone want to take my license copy is when I get on a boat because it might sink and they don't know who I was or something. So that being said, outside of some rare use cases, you don't physical ID and say to everybody, hey, take a copy and I trust you. Sure, I trust that broken filing cabinet in the back. And that's basically in the digital space right now.
Exactly.
So we want to attach it and give you a way to share it, flip the paradigm and say, well, wait a second. Instead of a brand having you check a box, if the brand really wants to have you buy from them, shouldn't they check your box?
Exactly.
Shouldn't they adhere to your terms of service? How often they can text to you, how often they can call you, if they can call you.
Yep.
Communications network simplified by us.
Well, what you're saying is, what I'm hearing you say is basically not only from the identity standpoint and being able to know who the other person is, but you're literally giving people the ability to take back their own identity, to take back their own data, which is the biggest thing now, the mother of all data leaks. That just happened recently. It was insane. People have become numb. They think, oh, my license is everywhere. My information is everywhere. And then they got all these LifeLocks and different companies and it's just one big fraud fest.
Yeah.
I mean, the fraud is in the trillions worldwide. So what you're basically saying is you can give people take back their own identity, their own data, and have brands and what have you, basically knock on their door.
Mm-hmm. And it's a two-sided benefit. If you think about it, it's a massive benefit for all parties involved. See, that's what the technology layer does underneath. It makes it so much less expensive because it's a zero trust. They call it zero trust because everybody has to have an identity that's validated. Yeah. So what we saw starting in the texting industry is you needed a business identity. What I say in the real world is, don't we all need our individual identity that's associated with each of these places and things, exactly. Right? You should be the ones in control, and who shares, who looks at us as good or bad. That should be a community effort outside of the social media sites. I think that data that we're putting in there is just another way for them to make money.
Yeah.
but it's never too late. It takes a first step to walk any long journey. If you don't take that first step, you'll never get to where you want to be.
Yeah.
And if you really want to understand identity and how you can start claiming it back, it starts with understanding, is there a solution out there that can do that? And what we're trying to do is provide not a solution like we're going to own your identity or anything. In fact, we don't want your identity. What we want is you to manage your identity using the plumbing that we've created. We don't want anything with that. We want to show you who is trying to use your identity or maybe currently selling your data. I mean, that's going to be part of your profile in the future. If somebody wants my data and they're paying someone else, why don't they just come to me, right? Why does it have to go through 7 different markets?
That's a whole business in itself. I mean, that's I can just imagine, boy, you'd really get some people lit up with that. That's a great selling point. And I mean, it's just, look, you're still trying to market it. Obviously, there's a lot of moving parts, and as you know, you've been around for a long time. But I think right now, when I first tried to talk to you about this, I'm like, no, they'll never let this fly. But I think right now, because of what's going on and the amount of fraud and the amount of insanity, I literally think, and because everybody's talking about it, and I've talked to 3 or 4 companies that, like to say how they have a variation of what you have, and every time I bring up your name, they're like, "Oh no, I have it here," and so that kind of led me to really hunt you down some more, which I did, as you know. And sorry I harassed you so much, because look, we want to find a solution. Because there's a solution out there, right?
Yeah.
Like I keep saying in podcasts, we can replace a human heart with a pig's heart. We can't stop all this stuff, and I love that you basically say you're the bottom layer of the whole piece. And the public needs the protection for their data, for their identity, for everything. I mean, this is such an important product that you have. And it's like when I met Jeff Pulver for the first time, and I grabbed him, I said, "Jeff, what do you think?" He just looked at me and says, "This is important." And that's what he said to me. It's just important. This is important. We need to bring trust back. And Jeff is big on the voice and emotions and stuff like that. He's a pretty intense guy, just a good guy. This is really important. So let me let you go back into what you're saying, but I want people to understand what you're doing here and what you've built is simplicity. You're not looking to own the world. You're just looking to become a bottom layer or a piece of multiple pieces. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. They call it like 2 in telecom or layer 3, like telecom. Basically, I make jokes about it. I swear, it was really done by, it's not Hisoshi. It's really somebody in telecom, because it's literally all of what we do with different acronyms and in a secure way. And it allows us to do things that we do through API today. API was an evolutionary jump. Look what Twilio did with programmatic telecom. And that was a huge jump because it showed that, wait a second, you could take this really clunky, usually heavy equipment and rolling cabinet kind of thing. When I was around at first, like literally rolling cabinets in call centers to handle phone calls, to now it's magical. You can just plug in with 0 code what you want it to do. So we do think that it does need something as simple and as secure as blockchain to be underneath that, because it just allows us to share things like a phone number with all these parties. Like I said, the chain of custody. And now if you have, and you see these other people saying, "Hey, well, let's add voice to it, but keep it separate." No. Absolutely not. In blockchain, and there's the methodology, right? Blockchain defines this. Exactly. When you have parties sharing access to the same asset or responsibilities of it. So think of a Google sheet where you're sharing and collaborating. That is what blockchain really is. It's the shared experience on a record where I say, "Hey, this client no longer is on my network," or "Hey, this client is a fraudster," right? And what happens today is nobody talks to each other. They're all siloed.
Yeah.
So what happens? Well, that fraudster just goes and plays, Frogger and jumps across that highway of, oh, look at that fast car of AT&T spam filters or whatever. I'm running this way. And they're just starting to peek their nose from under the blanket to do different things. Now's the time for us to help the carriers, not hurt them, right?
Yep.
Not good at managing little fractional pieces within a pipe that's this big.
Yeah.
They are good pipe people. Let them be good pipe people. Let us take the burden and say, I want Johnny to call me or Alan to call me or text me. I want control of that because I also want to see when somebody blocks something that they shouldn't.
Exactly. Yeah. Because I was posting on LinkedIn recently and the work that's taking place on content credentials. Again, underlying blockchain-based. It was from an IEEE Spectrum article. And you can see multiple industries are converging on similar types of solutions to, the provenance of your identity, the provenance of this image, so that when you're displaying it, if you're a news organization, you can pop the logo up to say, this proves that this is an original, unadulterated image. So yeah, it's converging. Oh, sorry.
So that so you can actually do a digital stamp on it with blockchain, maintain that chain of custody. So if some third party needs to peek into that and make sure it's real, like a news organization or a social media channel, they're not going to do something like they did to Taylor Swift.
Exactly.
That should have never gone anywhere. These companies have such tech that they can stop these things, but this is why we have to take back our control. Because if we can't take back our control, we're letting other people run our lives, and our digital lives have now become pretty big out of our regular life. So what we want to make sure that we help align with the carriers, we help align with the consumers, we help align with the regulators. And in every blockchain, you have these different elements, but basically it's a community of users, right?
Exactly.
You don't need an FCC as it is. They can govern in a more modern way by saying, hey, these are the criteria that we require for KYC. And they just lay it out there, and they say it just like how number portability was. You have to do this. This is how it's going to be. E911, you have to do this. This is how it's going to be. Now with KYC, here's some methods that you can use. These are the ones acceptable. This is the format of the data that you have to have, or at least the elements of it. And then you can create a baseline of identity across communications. So we're just here to connect the dots for folks, and we're having a ball doing it. I mean, we've run into so many use cases. It's insane. Hence why we had to drop to the plumber role, because there's just so many folks that want to use it for different purposes.
Exactly. Yeah.
Identity. So
we're massively over time, Noah. I think we could talk for at least a couple more hours on
Look,
this.
I mean,
so we'll have to have a part 2, 3, and 4 where we start to delve into the technology a little bit more, so people can relate to, because what helped me is once I understood it's like the W3C, distributed identifiers, I then understood the architecture, the framework, and how this fits within the web.
Well, I want to close this out, Alan.
Go for it.
So basically, Noah, what I'm seeing here, and talking about the carriers, and you're talking about everybody. Obviously, you've been in the business for many, many years, and you always do the right thing, and your reputation precedes you. For me, it comes down to the people. The people need to own their own identity. Twilio can't be telling people, hey, we're going to take your data. We're going to mine your data. This is insanity at the end of the day. People need to mine. If people want to get together as a group and say there's 1,000 people that want to get together and sell their data together or control their identity, I see everybody using this. But I see the consumer that's going to drive this, Noah. And I'll bet you right now that the consumer is going to be the one, once they're aware that they can go out and control and own their own identity, and you got to come to me, you're going to see people empowered. So that's just a prediction I made, but we do need to get you back on. And I have one more other problem. You're from the United States. How are you ever going to do anything in this country? We need to be forward.
I've lived on accounts.
Oh, okay. So all right. So you've got like pictures of yourself in different countries. Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
And I'll just superimpose them with AI now. I'll be everywhere. omnipresent.
Cool. Thanks so much for that, Noah, and we'll speak to you soon.
In today's digital world, unwanted guests have invaded our digital lives. Robocalls, spam, and unauthorized communications. Every day, most if not all who have access to a mobile device or home phone are bombarded with unsolicited calls and text messages. It's more than an annoyance. It's a threat to privacy and peace of mind. From our children to our aging parents, no one is immune. These intrusions don't just annoy, they often lead to fraud and scams, costing $8.1 billion in 2022 alone. How can this not be affecting consumer prices? The Stir-Shaken protocol promised a solution, but its implementation has been far from perfect, leaving many confused and unprotected. These are not just numbers, they're stories of real people like you and me caught in the web of digital deceit. Click the link and tell the FCC yours. It's time to take back control. Click the link below and follow the instructions on this screen. Be vigilant, be informed, and make your voice heard. Protect yourself and your loved ones by staying one step ahead. Sponsored by TNID Trusted Number Identity, where you own your digital rights. Together, we can reclaim our digital space. Our grandmothers, those we hold dear, the ones who have loved and cared for us, are tragically falling prey to these scams, scammed out of billions every year. Elderly people are often the prime targets of these insidious fraudsters. Why? Because they are seen as vulnerable, easy to manipulate, and often not tech-savvy. Robocallers and spammers are not just stealing their hard-earned savings, they're shattering their trust, robbing them of peace of mind and leaving them in a state of constant anxiety. It's a heartbreaking reality that in their twilight years, instead of enjoying peace and tranquility, they are plagued by fear and uncertainty. But it's not just about money, it's about dignity, it's about respect, it's about protecting those who once protected us. So ask yourself, what will you do to protect her, to protect them? It's time to take action. It's time to say no more. Together we can make a difference. With knowledge, vigilance, and the right tools, we can shield our loved ones from this digital menace. Let's reclaim our digital space, for them, for us.